Hello everybody, I'm Joshino, and today I'm going to be looking at Angels Fall First. Angels Fall First is a space warfare FPS and flight combat game. This game is in early access on Steam, and it started out originally as I think it was Unreal 3, but perhaps it went back as far as the Unreal Tournament 2004. But at the very least, it went from an Unreal 3 mod to a standalone alpha game, which was released on the SDK, which I played at the time. And now it's its own standalone game, still based on the Unreal Engine 3, but basically it's been in development for years now. And it has been something that I've kept my eyes on for a very long time, just because this game, it's not groundbreaking, but these gameplay elements are much more of a shake-up compared to what we're seeing now in video games and the trend towards games playing safe and having quite good gameplay mechanics, but not being adventurous enough. With a lot of games now wanting to hit the core demographic of the mass market and tending to shy away from anything that's a bit adventurous. So some of the maps in Angels Fall First have this full-scale, basically space warfare, where you have capital ships on two sides, and you have frigates, and you have lots of individuals in fighters and bombers, and also you can board the capital ships, and the capital ships are living, breathing bases in of themselves, which you have to take and blow up, and you can either do it by shooting at it from another capital ship, or you can do it by getting inside and blowing up the core. And this is the part that is fairly amazing, that the game has you in these ships whilst they're moving around, whilst they're fighting in space. And it is almost seamless, the fighting on the spacecraft. There's no sort of motion sickness, you're not thrown around weirdly. Sometimes it does seem that the whole floor wobbles, but not in a way that's too jarring. So this is something that we won't see until Star Citizen comes out, and we've seen that in the demo for Star Citizen, that they have this sort of boarding and docking. However, games have really shied away from this. I mean, I've got to give credit to Battlefield 3 and 4 for having that massive destruction, which took us in a new direction, which I thought was good. But I do think that they've really shied away from these sort of massive moving bases and interesting mechanics, like in Battlefield 2142 with the Titan, which was a spaceship that you had to board and blow up via the map, and like in Battlefield 1942, the naval destroyers, you could basically walk around them whilst they're moving. And to mention it, the space combat is very fun in and of itself, and although it takes ages to blow up a capital ship, and you will be basically focusing your fire for quite a while, so it doesn't get boring. It's such a spectacle to see these massive lumbering capital ships twisting around, firing their laser beams, switching between missiles, trying to manage all of your weapon systems. The game is dated in its visuals, in that the textures and the meshes and things like that you can tell they were from the Unreal 3 engine, and they're not quite polished. But, and I will say this, this game is such a labour of love, and you can see, not in the terms of the pixels, but in the terms of the models, just so much love has been given to this game. And you'll be flying through space wreckage, and you'll be looking at all these little scaffolds jutting out in between the spacecraft that's been blown in half, and there's just so many little details on them. It's a beautiful game, even though it doesn't have like the striking visuals of newer games and the Unreal 4 engine. The gameplay is sort of the same as well. You can tell that they've put a lot of effort into it, and you have a large selection of weapons, a large section of, basically you can customize each loadout, you can change ammo types, reload speeds on weapons, just there's lots of customization. And with the ships you can put anything on them, and there's sort of like a point system where you have so many points to spend, and you can buy, say, instead of having a shield on your ship, you could say, I want another missile launcher, a 6 missile pod thing, and I want that on my ship, rather than having a bit more defense. And it does give a lot of freedom in the game, although I'm not too sure about this. They have like an XP system where you can unlock more points to use in the game, and I don't know whether I really agree with it, and it seems like it could take quite a while to get the points together. The gameplay in the ship combat. The actual shooting and things feels very clunky. It's not refined, but to be fair to it, you don't expect in a game where you can board capital ships, you're having capital ship fights, to have the best FPS experience, but I do think that's somewhere where they could improve, and the weapons themselves all feel a bit out of place and they don't feel realistic, or they don't have a punch. Another thing to mention is that when you are on the ground, there's some ground maps as well, it plays almost like a Battlefield game. You can have up to 64 players in the maps, although I've never been in a multiplayer game where they've had that many people, so I don't know whether I've got the full experience yet. And bots, you can only have 32 at the moment, but I can see why, because I think it's very resource intensive when you're running it with bots. And to be honest with you, the ground game, which bases on ground maps, and it's just like, it plays like Battlefield or whatever, it's just like a big map and you're fighting with tanks and taking points. It's not really what you play the game for. It doesn't really compare to Battlefield or Planetside or those sorts of games. Personally, I think that with the clunky mechanics of the infantry, it's not a wow factor, and in all honesty, I'd rather that more of the maps were in space and had more of the boarding mechanics and more capital ship maps. So I do hope that's what they focus on, seeing as there's an early access game. I mean, you can tell the Unreal element from the engine and from its modding history. It does feel a bit like an Unreal game, but it doesn't completely translate well to a Battlefield style arena. There isn't the finesse of aiming and control of fire and things like that. It's much more tweaked for an arcadey, close quarters, jumpy style gameplay. Something that is a big problem with the game is the current tick rate and also the lag on the servers. I've played on a few multiplayer servers, and you can be firing a weapon at somebody so many times, and this is only really infantry. The aircraft seem to be able to take the hits. I don't know why, but when you're fighting in the ships or on the ground, you could be shooting a shotgun at somebody really close range, and none of the shots will register, and then you're forced to switch to your knife because you run out of ammo, and then it looks really silly, but you end up having fights with knives in the game, and that can sometimes happen. I don't know why it is. I don't know whether it's something that they could fix easily, but that's a big problem with the game. Also, the bots are a bit derpy, but it is very impressive actually that they can use the cap ships, they can board the cap ships. They're best at space fighting, basically. The actual infantry AI gets stuck on things in the ships. It is a big achievement in some ways, but there's room for improvement there as well. I mean, thinking about it, not a lot of games do give AI anymore. I mean, Battlefield doesn't have AI. You can't have offline games there. And I don't think Star Wars Battlefront has AI. Maybe it does. I didn't think there was an offline mode in the sense of like a 20 versus 20 people game. And this is what I really want to talk about, is that although this game is definitely rough around the edges, and it is a bit dated in its visuals on certain levels, and the gameplay needs some work and needs some tightening, and there's problem with the servers. If you like sci-fi, if you like space games, it is definitely worth just having the experience of boarding capital ships, running around the decks of the hangar and fighting in between them, and also having these massive capital ship battles in the game. It's just an experience that you need to have. Basically, it's the epitome of what games should be moving towards, and it's a shame that it has to come from indie teams, and bigger AAA titles will just stick to the guns, and Star Wars Battlefront looks so bland, and it's so small, and a lot of the flair that they had in the other games in the series, like the capital ship battles with boarding, but the capital ships I don't think moved or were fairly static and didn't have very big insides in the ships. They've lost that, and it's a massive shame. And to see a developer go out of their way and put so much love into crafting these ships and getting it so it would work almost perfectly. I mean, I was just standing at the front on the bridge of a ship, looking out into space and watching a battle unfold around me, and I thought, this is amazing. And hopefully this will be the feeling that we'll also get in Star Citizen, but we'll have to see with that game. Anyway, as I said, it is an early access game, but it has been in development so long, and it's in a state at the moment where there's plenty of maps, and most of the gameplay is there, and most of the items are there. It's not really an alpha, it's like a very late beta, so I think it is worthwhile giving it a good overview / review sort of thing to see whether or not it's worth playing. And as I said, it's got its problems, it definitely has its problems, but the experience, it's just such a breath of fresh air. And as a bit of a sci-fi nerd, I'm in awe playing this game. And honestly, I think it's definitely worth a try. But obviously, it's up to you to decide whether it's worth £10 or not. Anyway, what does everyone else think? Has anyone else been playing AFF, Angels Fall First? I had a few people ask me if it was a Planetside 2 killer, and I was like, it's not really the same game. It's not exactly a Battlefield game. It's not exactly... Planetside 2 is an MMO, so it's completely different in some ways. You can just jump onto Angels Fall First and play a couple of rounds in an hour and jump off again, and then you'll feel, I suppose, satisfied that you've got your 2 wins, or like 2 of the maps that you've won. It's not really a Planetside killer, and it's not really what any other game's killer. It's its own experience, and something that I think I'll keep coming back to and playing a few hours of. It's not something that I think would take over me in the sense that I play it really long. Like I sometimes play Planetside 2 for like 4 or 5 hours in a day, but it's definitely a fun game at the moment, and it hopefully will get better. So what does everyone else think anyway? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's nice, shiny and yellow in the top left corner, waiting for a click. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, Joshino.